Late notice, but Andrew is just visiting Jersey and has offered to do this as an extra. My name's Emily Jennings and I'm part of the Health Professionals for Safer Screens with a background in psychology, and I also design playgrounds here and just playful public spaces. I got interested in this area, in this topic, because I have 4 children, 21, 18, 14 and 10, and I noticed the difference of parenting the 21-year-olds as tech became more just dominant in childhood. And so I've connected with various kind of experts like Andrew on gaming, because I've got 1 son, 3 daughters. So the 3 girls are more social media focused, whereas the son is really into gaming. And I have no idea. I'm like, that sounds scary, or you're really hard to get off when you're on that, or you're really mean to your sister after you've been playing Fortnite, and you're not enjoying the beach when we take you out because you just want to go back and play Fortnite. So I've been navigating that route and just trying to help other parents as we're all trying to navigate the dominance of the digital world. So over to Andrew, the pro in this area, and we'll have an opportunity for questions, but if you guys need to slip out, or the toilets are over here, fire exits here.
Yeah, fire exits that way. If we get a massive drop which somehow manages to block all 4 set there's 5 doors, then the fire exit is
amazing, thank you. And we're going to record Andrew, but not questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Hi. Am I ready to go? Firstly, can everybody hear me? I've opted not to use a mic just because I will trip up over the cable, put it down and forget about it, or speak uncomfortably close to it. Just put a hands up if you need me to speak louder. Okay, good, excellent. My name's Andrew. We can go on to the slides. So who am I? This is me at 13, by the way, and I chose this photo very deliberately for 2 key reasons. Firstly, I was 12 when the iPhone was released, so this was about 1 year after smartphones really hit the mainstream in a big way. That meant that I got to see a before and after in school. So when I started school, maybe 1 person had a BlackBerry, maybe 1 or 2. By the time I finished in secondary school, everybody had smartphones. That's how much time it took. I'm also, in this picture, very much a video game addict, losing thousands of hours to video games, which I couldn't really tell you anything about now in terms of active, positive experiences. I'm a dad of 2, my eldest is 8, my youngest is 4, and despite what I just said, I am still a lifelong gamer. If you were coming to this talk tonight expecting me to rant about the evils, get real fire and brimstone about video games, that's not what this talk is. I play video games with my eldest. My youngest is a bit too young yet, and so I do think that they can have a positive place as a form of entertainment. And on to the next point, Samuel. So I'm a tech professional, and forgive me because I have, as part of that, I'm here for completely unrelated reasons, and it's been a very long day of work. So this is a little bit rough compared to my normal presentations, but a large part of my career has been building addictive systems. So I've built or taken part in building cryptocurrency websites, online casinos, straight up video games. And I got into smartphone through childhood because I was seeing the parallels between the way in which we would be trying to get users to get on and stay on the platforms we were building, and the techniques that are used by apps and games geared towards children. I also host a podcast called The Dopamine Slot Machine, which is very much a podcast version of the talk that you've come here tonight to do. So I get on various experts and guests to come on and talk about video games and video game design as they pertain to children. So on to the next slide, please, Samuel. So firstly, a little bit of housekeeping. What is addictive design and why do tech companies use it? This is a really ill-defined term with growing recognition. So, do we have any addiction specialists or professionals in here, whether it's the healthcare capacity or social care capacity? No. I am not an addiction specialist. I just want to get that out of the way here. I do refer to addictive design in the way that it's used in industry. So what this talk isn't is somebody with a history of treating people with gambling, disordered gambling or substance abuse problems. This is me speaking as somebody who has built systems that are recognised as addictive by the people building them. It first got a lot of recognition in about 2016, about the Brexit referendum, with particularly when Cambridge Analytica and what they were doing came to light, again with the referendum and Trump. A lot more attention was brought to Facebook's use of things such as infinite scroll and targeting what content you see. But for the purpose of this talk, I define it as user interface and user experience elements that encourage compulsive behaviour rather than being positively motivating. It is very well known that there's a huge difference between wanting something and enjoying something. And that can feel a little bit hard to wrap your head around at first, because why would you want something you don't enjoy? But that is the fundamental malfunctioning, the sort of short-circuiting that you might see in addicts of any form. On to the next point, please. And finally, not all design that is addictive is inherently bad. So in terms of design elements that we know help to encourage compulsive behaviour, that varies from really dark sort of gambling mechanics which are lifted straight out of casinos to just having a jingle when you complete an activity in a game. So when when Mario gets to the end of the level and a little jingle plays, we know that that encourages you to keep playing. We know the impact of not having that. What I'm not doing is saying that when Nintendo implemented that in Super Mario Brothers decades ago, that this was part of a grand conspiracy to get us all addicted to tech. Fundamentally, addictive design is used because it works. Generally speaking, the more time that a user spends in-app or game, the more money they spend. This is true for games which have that free-to-play model, so they're monetizing based off of in-game transactions, as opposed to games which you go pay £70 or £80 or however much it is these days. I can't remember the last time I bought a game for the price. And then you take it home, you play it, and then you never have to buy anything again. It's also true for social media. The more time you spend on social media, the more money you are making that social media company. It's also true for platforms like eBay, Vinted. Do we have anybody who uses Vinted here? I'm not going to tell you off. Nobody uses Vinted? There we go, thank you. We got 2 people who will admit to using Vinted. I had a really good talk last week, and we had a paediatrician who was saying that she's got rid of pretty much all of her apps, but and she said this jokingly, maintains a Vinted addiction. I'm going to do something that might shock you now. I'm going to invite, specifically you two, if you've got them, to get your phones out.
Well,
nobody's going to look at them.
Hang on, it's actually my son that uses it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we've kind of encouraged him to use it, so I'm really surprised to hear you mention it in the conversation here. So I'd be interested to hear.
If nobody is brave enough to get Vinted out, I'm happy to talk about. And it wasn't to show anybody, by the way. It's just I was going to walk through some of the addictive design elements that Vinted uses, and you'll be able to see them for yourself. So, for one, infinite scroll. So you can scroll Vinted forever. Once you've run out of things, and Facebook Marketplace as well, pretty much all shopping apps, pretty much every app now has infinite scroll in some form. We know the cognitive impact that has on its user, because it means that there is never a distinct endpoint to your time on that app. Vinted as well, push notifications, which are also standard everywhere, as that subtle reminder, well not even subtle, but that reminder to get you back onto the app. App developers can see when it's best to send those push notifications. They have access to that sort of information to best get you to come back into using that app. And finally, there's the you never know what you're going to find, right? The whole app is geared towards discovery and rewards you for doing so. Developers are very much disconnected from the impact of addictive design. I did a computer science degree, my bachelor's in Aberystwyth in West Wales. At the time, not considered a very good university. These days, kind of considered a middling university. I did my master's a couple of years ago at Bath University, which is considered quite a good university. I wanted to say that because at both of these universities, I was taught the same thing. And so that was, in human-computer interaction, was focusing on how do you maximize engagement from your users. And at no point was it considered what impact that has on their users. It was presented very one-dimensionally. Of course you as developers want to maximize engagement from your users. That is your purpose as a developer. It was never questioned. And so when I entered industry after this, it was certainly not questioned. I'm then using that in my day job. Its use is getting more widespread and more intense. I use Vinted and its infinite scroll and push notifications as an example, because those are what Facebook was controversial for a decade ago. What was used to get us all addicted to social media is now used in our shopping apps, in our language learning apps, looking at you Duolingo, which is actually very much a pioneer in the use of addictive design. It is everywhere. It is used in EdTech. Do your schools have timetable rock stars in Jersey? Yeah. I hate it. It is very much taking the assumption that studying is good, right? So anything you can do to increase engagement with studying must also therefore be good, which is actually quite a huge leap. So what was controversial 10 years ago is standard now, and what is groundbreaking and innovative now could be standard in 10 years' time. I want to talk briefly on evidence. So I've seen what is available in industry, and I've seen what is being done in academia, and there is a massive disparity in resources between the two. What you can do in industry and what you can do in academia are on completely different levels. Next point, Sam. So in academia, you might have a really large ethnographic survey, where it's one of the largest ones, you might be speaking to a few thousand children. With something like Facebook, every single user of Facebook is an unwitting and constant member of a focus group, as it were. Roblox, exactly the same. Fortnite. Big industry is relentlessly testing their platforms on their users and gathering billions of data points. I was reading about the rise of machine gambling in Vegas, and so much of sort of original addictive design comes from that. It's because they boasted about being able to get hundreds of data points. How woefully naive does that sound about boasting about getting hundreds of data points when if you are, and I am a smartphone user and I am using all the apps I'm talking about, you are generating that not in months, not in years, in hours. Every single interaction on a game like Fortnite will be tracked and monitored. That said, a degree of platform refinement is standard practice for all businesses. Anybody here run a business with an online presence? Perhaps spend on Google Ads? So, I do, and one of the things that you can put on there is AI smart bidding, and it will tell you the various signals about when you are most likely to maximize conversions, and it will subtly adjust your content, your advertising content, to maximize conversions, or whatever output that you want to measure success by. That's done everywhere. And as such, when I see studies such as ones which say, surveyed 2,000 children and found that some of them were saying that they're starting to self-regulate a bit with mobile phones, and therefore we must be careful to not deprioritize the voice of children, and we must take what they say at face value. I see studies like that and I think, you have no idea what's behind the curtain here. There is an arrogance to it, and I'm not anti-expert, but I just want to take some of the writers of these studies, and I want to show them what we were doing. Because without being bounded by ethics committees or reviews, and being able to not do A/B testing, but automatic AI-powered A, B, C, D through to Z testing, there is no comparison. On to the next slide, please. So yeah, this is not an accident. So I could have picked any number of hundreds of articles just like this. This one, our 8-year-old daughter spent £8,500 on the Apple App Store. It says Apple App Store. It was actually Roblox, this one. Everything about the way these apps are set up is designed to, one, funnel children, not just children, but any users, but I'm primarily talking about children's apps today, into making these purchases, making it as simple as possible to make those purchases, and two, if they have made them, to encourage them to keep making them. One of the massive game-changing innovations in Vegas was effectively cashless gambling, right? Who here has a smartphone? Sorry, has a card linked to their smartphone? I do. Who here has a child that they've let play on said smartphone? I will. I'll admit that. What you've done there then is, if that game has in-app purchases, you've opened yourself up to the risk of them unwittingly being able to spend in-game, but you've done that in a way which the gambling industry was pursuing for decades as their real sort of, this is our sort of end state of what we want in terms of ways to extract money from gamblers. And so moving on to a little bit more about mechanics, some of you might have heard of a Skinner box, particularly if you've got a psychology background. I might be misusing this a little bit here, but if I'm misusing it, it's because everybody in our industry is misusing it. So when we talk about Skinner boxes, it refers to an experiment by psychologist B.F. Skinner that shows that unpredictable rewards are more compulsion-inducing than predictable rewards. So if you had an animal in a cage that had a button, and every 10 button clicks it dispensed a bit of food, that was less compulsion forming than if the intervals between it dispensing food were much more random. And so that's been applied at length in casinos. It's also been applied in video games with loot boxes. If you haven't, I'm not going to talk too much about loot boxes at this point. It is something that regulators are cracking down on. It's something that people are more aware of. But if you aren't aware, it's the ability to buy something, typically using real money in a game, to get a random item. So a blind box. Anybody heard of Labubu's? Yeah, everybody heard of Labubu's? Anybody bought one? Labubu's do this really interesting thing. They are creepy. I really dislike them. My daughter is desperate for them. She's not going to get one. They do this really interesting thing where you go to the website to buy one. It's a blind box. You don't know you don't know which one you're going to get, but it will reveal what you have bought. So if it's not the one you wanted, you can go just instantly buy the next one. But I'm primarily going to talk about it in game design and reward systems. So if you just go back a little bit first. Anybody here play chess? Any chess players? So, excellent. So with chess, the system of matchmaking where you're paired against players who are of similar skills, more or less, right? ELO. Now that exists, matchmaking systems exist in video games as well. But with video games, what you can do, and this is done in games such as Fortnite, such as League of Legends. I had a fantastic conversation with a lady who used to work at Riot Games the other week exactly about this. If you can see that your players start to stop playing, are more likely to cease the game session after a losing streak of 3 games, then you can adjust the matchmaking to make it either, to make it so you're playing against somebody that is weaker than you would normally be matched against, to make it more likely that you either get that win and thus continue playing, or narrowly miss out on that win, which has a huge impact psychologically. But yeah, so this is applied in pretty much all sort of popular online, particularly free, multiplayer games with matchmaking. In-game currencies, well, everybody knows what these are, everybody knows why they're used in casinos. They obfuscate the spender, the value of what they're spending from the value they're getting from it. It leads to riskier, more impulsive decisions. It's pretty standard. Robux, V-Bucks, Minecoins. You can get gift cards of these in pretty much every shop, at least on the mainland. I don't know what it's like on Ireland, if it's still a thing here. But pretty much every major free-to-play game will have a virtual currency, which does exactly this. You do not buy items in Roblox with pounds, dollars, euros. You first have to convert your currency to Robux, and then buy using those. This also enables a couple of quite sneaky things, such as denominating items in such a way that you end up with a little bit left over. And if you've got 100 Robux left over, and the item you want is, you could get something for 150 Robux. Well, you're so much more likely to then top your Robux back up and spend again. And the primary purchasers the primary people who are spending these, the target market, is children. So we are taking, again, a lesson learnt in casinos, applying it to our kids. Next slide, please, Sammy. Unfortunately, we don't have sound for this one. I had something set up, so with each of these, you're going to get a different notification. Anybody here use Teams for work? If I were to start playing the Teams sound right now, what sort of psychic damage would that do you? it would do it for me, right? So we absolutely have a Pavlovian response to our phones. Onto the next point. So you get push notifications which prompt users to log into the app or game. It's building that habit, you're constantly checking it. When I last did this talk and the first notification went off, bearing in mind that this was a talk to professionals about the impacts of screens on children, and we had just had 3 extremely dark, depressing, hard-hitting talks from health professionals and the police, close to a quarter of the audience automatically checked their pockets, checked their phones, unconsciously. My phone is over there somewhere. Just talking about this, I am wanting to check my phone. We are absolutely programmed into checking it regularly. Streak mechanics then reward players for logging in and performing actions every day. Duolingo very much popularised this. TikTok, I actually got a message today from my partner, bless her, whilst I was having dinner and thinking about this talk. And TikTok has just introduced a new set of streak mechanics. So you can build up a streak with somebody. Once you get to a 200-day streak, they've just introduced this, you get this little sort of Tamagotchi type thing in the game that you have to keep alive and growing by continuing to interact with the app by sending content. So you're not just doing it for yourself, but you're bringing other people into this by maintaining and building on that streak. And then these streak mechanics mean that you are being punished when you stop. So it is a carrot and a stick here. And for children who invest a huge amount of themselves into these virtual spaces, that stick can, has anybody accidentally deleted a Minecraft world? I've never deleted one of my children's Minecraft worlds, but I have lost one of my Minecraft worlds. So I would have been about 15 when Minecraft was an alpha, and it was heart-wrenching. If you take a 8-year-old who is regularly playing a game and they are getting rewards for this streak, but also the in-game value is based on the maintenance of that streak, and then you take that game away, you are not just depriving them of their favourite source of, dubiously calling it entertainment here, but you are actively hurting them in the sense of they've invested a huge amount of their self-value into this, and you are reducing that self-value. On to the next slide, please. So this hasn't 100% worked because I was editing this on my phone whilst having dinner about 2 hours ago. But I wanted to talk about some popular games. So the first one we're going to talk about is Roblox. I love talking about Roblox. At some point they're going to take a hit out on me because every single time I stand up and talk about Roblox, it just gets worse and worse. So powerful monetization techniques are embedded at every level. I talked about Robux just now. A lot of games have their own currency built onto it. Rivals, very popular player versus player shooting game in Roblox. To access pretty much, if you want better gear in that game, you have to buy Robux and then buy their own currency keys, which further lock you into that specific environment. Roblox is not a game, by the way. I don't know if most of you were aware of that. It's the platform on which you can develop and play games. So Roblox don't develop their own games. Developers make the games there. And so it does have a set of maturity ratings, but if you are looking to maximize the amount of value that you're getting out of your users, you're not going to lock out the 50% of Roblox players which are under 13. You're going to say your game's suitable for 5 years and up. And there is basically no moderation on this. Again, the things that I've seen are horrifying here. We're talking everything from straight up gambling games. I don't mean that in the sort of woolly sense of, oh, there's some Skinner box-esque mechanics there. I am talking digital representation of Plinko games and other casino games in games which are marketed at 5-year-olds and up. And of course it's a safeguarding nightmare. So it has parental controls. These don't work, right? You can block somebody, but everybody else can still talk to you in the public chat. You can block individual games, but games on Roblox are sort of multiplying. It's almost viral, right? To take an example, there is a subgenre on Roblox called Yan Sims, which are sort of copies of a game which is semi-popular in Japan called Yandeer Simulator. Now, Yandeer refers to, how can I put it? Attractive women who might be a little bit unstable and violent. And so, in Yandeer Simulator, you play the part of a girl in high school who is murdering your love rivals so that you can get your love interest. Now, these games are constantly being banned, but they're constantly being made. And so you're trying to sort of squish out something which is multiplying faster than anybody could possibly ban it. Roblox's attempt to talk about how they handle this is to introduce AI controls, which I would trust about as far as I can throw them. And so Fortnite, on to the next one. There we go, we get a title now. You've probably already read these bits. So it's much more corporate than Roblox. It's very much actively designed by Epic Games, with much less focus on user-generated content. In Roblox, you might get a developer try and sell you a skin that they've made. In Fortnite, you will get an official partnership with Sabrina Carpenter, with Sabrina Carpenter-sponsored dances and Sabrina Carpenter-sponsored outfits, and with a Sabrina Carpenter-partnered advertising campaign. And again, very heavy use of harmful monetization and design techniques. The last game I wanted to talk about, which is probably the third most popular game amongst children, is Minecraft. And funnily enough, I'm actually a lot more positive about Minecraft. And so it's got much longer reward loops. It does have its own in-game currency, but that's not used to facilitate play. It's used to buy additional content within the game of dubious value, but that's neither here nor there. Now, Minecraft actually started life as an indie game. So whereas both Roblox and Fortnite were very much from the start very corporate affairs, Minecraft was a one-man development effort, and even though it is now owned by Microsoft, it still maintains that sort of original roots. But it does have social networking features that require active disabling by parents. We run a Minecraft Realm server for our eldest as a sort of safe alternative digital third space. It's whitelisted, so only people that we know can get on there. It's not a case of trying to block everybody that we don't know. It is only people that we know, and we've spoken to their parents, on there, and it's only on there if you are supervised. But if you were to just hand Minecraft to a kid, then there'll be various public servers they can go onto, and all of the safeguarding concerns that come with the internet having direct access to your child. So what can we do to reduce the harm of video games? So first, encourage parents to play the games their children play. Most of you are probably parents. Who here has children that play video games? Keep your hands up if you play video games with your child. Excellent. That's probably about half of you guys who put your hands up in the first place. Look, it's really easy for me to say because my first gaming experience was probably Doom when I was about 3. Really questionable parenting choices there. Thanks, Mum and Dad. Particularly if they end up saying this. But if you are playing the games they're playing, you are going to be so much more aware of what it's like to live in those virtual worlds than if you were to even have the most open of conversations with them. Educating parents on video game design choices and risks, you can tell that this talk was last given to a room of educational health and welfare professionals. But from your guys' perspective, just understanding the very basics about how game design can impact the way that games influence your children is a huge step. And I do have a couple of lists of games to talk a little bit more on after this. If children are going to play free-to-play games, which emphasize microtransactions, and by the way, every free-to-play game will emphasize microtransactions, never pay for in-game items. Do not cross that line. Once you cross that line, and we can see this from the data, once you cross that line, it is really easy to get you to cross that line again, and again, and again. It is the abstinence approach, right, which is flawed in of itself, but if you are making that decision, let that be a good red line. What I will say is, generally speaking, in UK population, between about 2 and 4% of people can be identified as having a clinically significant gambling problem. In central Vegas, this rises to about 40%. Addiction is a function of the interaction between a user and their source of addiction. And the more often they're exposed to that, the more chances they have to cultivate that. So I will say, I know I say here, if you're going to let your children play free-to-play games, it is so much safer just not to. Encouraging sensible limits and boundaries. Even less harmful games have abuse potential. In one of my slides, a couple of slides later, I talk about a game called Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I consider this a really positive example of game design. It is story focused. You play it once, you don't have to play it again. Completed it, done. It's got relatively long reward cycles. It is art in many ways. A friend of mine that I was speaking to at the weekend, he was describing how he recently had an 18-hour play session on Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Now, there's only really 3 things that people do for 18 hours. And he did that overnight, by the way. 1, drug binges. 2, gambling binges. 3, video games. So even games which I identify as relatively helpful, but relatively less harmful, have abuse potential. And so having sensible limits, which are probably a lot less than you'd think, go some way to mitigate that. And that also means, if your child isn't handling it very well, if they are coming away from the video game and they are very dysregulated, maybe that game isn't for them. Maybe it's they've had too much for themselves. What works for one child is not going to work for another. And then finally, keeping gaming in public areas. A games console in a living room, where you've got that sort of passive observation, people walking past, is going to be so much safer than playing on a mobile phone in your bedroom, on a bus, or in the bathroom, right? Putting aside the impact on sleep of playing video games on your phone in the bedroom, or the fact that phone use in the bathroom is correlated with digestive problems, including hernias. You are just, if you did nothing else, you let children have everything from Snapchat to to Roblox, to Facebook, but you let them have it on a computer in a family space, so that the internet was a place they went to rather than an extension of themselves that they carried around with them, you would see a lot less harm. On to the next slide, please. So, very briefly, other risky games to be aware of. FIFA/EA Sports FC, which is what it's now called. Although this is a paid game, there's a huge emphasis on microtransactions, although most people, I understand, now get it free through something like PlayStation Plus or Game Pass. You can go look up, there are loads of stories online of people talking about their own addiction to meta chasing, so constantly needing the best players, buying player packs, and it is as monetized as many of the other games I talk about. League of Legends and Dota 2, these are both really interesting examples because these are real, these are probably the biggest esports games, or at least they were a few years ago. But they're both free to play, and they both, again, have that emphasis on microtransactions. And they have, it was League of Legends I mentioned earlier when I was speaking with this lady who used to work at Riot Games, and we're talking about how they sort of rigged the matchmaking to increase total player time. Counter-Strike, everything that I just talked about also applies here, but there's an extra thing. Who here has heard of CS skins gambling? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's effectively just an unregulated gambling industry using in-game cosmetics for the game Counter-Strike. It is so much bigger than you realise. There are YouTubers who have made entire YouTube careers out of just streaming themselves playing Counter-Strike skins gambling games. Rocket League, everything I spoke about applies to Rocket League as well. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Rocket League myself, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the first games that really caused the first sort of moral panic, as it were, about video game addiction are what's called MMORPGs. That stands for Massive Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Games. So these include things such as RuneScape. I played this as a kid, actually. I played hundreds of hours of RuneScape as a kid. World of Warcraft, I've had friends ruin their lives with World of Warcraft. The Elder Scrolls Online, it's not limited to these. What's interesting about these is they probably accidentally discovered a lot of the ways in which games can be addictive. And they would have been the first sort of examples of digital landscapes where you have a digital self, right? There's a really good documentary on Netflix, whose name escapes me, but I'll look it up after the talk if you're interested, about this kid in Norway who was terminally ill, heavily disabled, and from his parents' perspective, he was just sat there on the computer all day, every day. From his perspective, he had a community of people that he was playing with and engaging in a world, and being able to play in a way that he cannot do in the real, or could not do, he's passed away now, in the real world. It's very heartwarming, this documentary. It's really uplifting, well worth watching. However, everything that made that positive for him can also be enticing for children who maybe they're struggling at school, maybe they struggle socially. They've got this virtual world where they have value, where people want to be spending time with them, and they're able to cooperate together as a team to do something like what's called raids, for instance. And so, on one hand, these can be fantastic community-based hobbies. On the other hand, I have seen them ruin lives. Pokemon Go, also a really weird one. So on one hand, anybody here play Pokemon Go? It was really popular about 2016. Excellent. So it encourages you to get outside, right? It's okay. The hope was that it would encourage you to play outside because you have to literally walk around and catch Pokemon with it. On one hand, it's now built this huge community aspect of it. On the other hand, it is a very popular free game that encourages microtransactions to progress. And finally, all free mobile games, they all operate the same way. There might be one or two artist-driven ones where they never aim to make a penny out of it, and they just release them, and fantastic. But that's probably not what's going to be top of the charts in the App Store. But some less harmful game examples. Minecraft and Minecraft Realms, as I was talking about, online social play that you can make safer, not It's safe. It's safe until you forget that it's dangerous. You still have to beware mine coins, microtransactions, public service. There's a game that's recently come out called Lego Voyages, and if you've never played a video game with your child, I thoroughly encourage you, go look up the trailer for this. It is a slow, pretty, cooperative puzzle game. And it's exactly the sort of game which I played with my eldest. It is a piece of art. Other examples in the same sort of fashion are It Takes Two and Split Fiction, but those are definitely more geared towards older audiences. Pardon? Sackboy would be. I actually have played Sackboy with my daughter. It's a good game. And then finally, Pokemon, Zelda, Astrobot. I actually mentioned Zelda earlier as a game that a friend of mine did have a problem with. But any sort of single-player story-based games will have lower harm potential because they're not trying to constantly suck you into the microtransaction loop. And again, to reiterate, the safest game is the one that you play with your child. Now here's where we get onto the slides which I sort of put together after a chat whilst I was having dinner this evening. So some notes on healthier gaming. I have talked about addictive game design. That's only one element of it, one piece of the puzzle. Setting and contextualization matter. I have absolutely slandered Fortnite tonight, but which is healthier? Your kid playing Fortnite on the sofa with a couple of their mates, split screen. They've been looking forward to it for a while. They've got some crisps and some dips, and it's a real social event. Is that better than playing, say, Zelda alone in their room at 3 in the morning when they've got school the next day? Setting and contextualization matter hugely here. And that's not to say that Fortnite is better, but just because you're choosing less risky games doesn't mean that it's a healthy habit. And so does the individual child. Different children will have different tolerances for different things. And what harms one child might not harm another. What one child can cope with, another child might not be able to cope with. And something that I like to remind people, and we have done, is as a parent, you are allowed to change your mind. If your child has a video game that they play, and they are not coping with it, you are allowed to say, you're not coping with this, we'll revisit this when you're older. It's a difficult conversation, it's a lot easier to say than it is to do. Trust me, I've had to do that myself. But if you're a parent, you can do that. This came out from I think it was the Minister for Children and Young People for Jersey. And if you can't read it, it's a note written about asking children what is the best thing about going online, and what's the biggest concern over their digital lives. So this is a 10-year-old in Jersey who said the best thing about going online is playing with your friends, but the biggest concern is you get very addictive and stop socialising. This is really interesting to me because the pull factor, being able to play with their friends, being able to socialise, operating in this third space which children so unfortunately are deprived of, what pulls them onto there is the very thing that they dislike about being there. They go on, they want to be there because it's the only real avenue they have to play with their friends, but even they recognise that in doing so, they stop playing with their friends. And so, this is probably a good time to stop recording. So the next slide, I want it to be a little bit more interactive. So we can go on to the next slide.